Welcome to Candid Conversations. Today we're going to be talking about all things leadership. We're going to be talking about 5 leadership lessons. So let's get right into it. Lesson number 1 is this. As leaders, we need to seek God's heart, not his hands. If we're seeking God's hands, we're seeking what God can do for us. God, what can you make for me? Lord, how successful can you make my ministry? Lord, what can you build with your hands to give me glory? And this is what seeking God's hands look like. But as a leader, our priority is to seek God's heart. When we seek God's heart, we're humbling ourselves and we're saying, it's not what God can build for me, it's what can I build for God? It's humbling ourselves saying, God, what's your plan for me? What's your plan for this ministry? What's your plan for my business? We need to seek God's heart, not his hands. We see an amazing example of this in the Gospels. Peter, this is 3 days after Jesus died, so, it's the best day. We're on day 3, and Peter, he is out on the water. He's on a boat with other disciples. They're fishing. They've been out all day, and they've been able to catch absolutely nothing. And then they see a man on the shore, and the man is Jesus, but they don't recognize him to be Jesus straight away. And the man says, hey, chuck your nets on the other side of the boat, and you're going to catch fish. And the guys were like, sure, we've caught nothing else, so might as well. So they put it on the other side, and then suddenly they catch this abundance of fish on the boat. So the boat is at capacity. It's almost going to sink. At this point, the disciples realize it's Jesus on the shore. What does Peter do? Peter, he jumps in the water, fully clothed, and starts swimming towards Jesus. He's going to do whatever he can to get to Jesus. What's the lesson here? The lesson here, leaders, hear this. Being with Jesus on the shore is ultimately more important than being on the boat with what Jesus has done. What does that mean? Being in the presence of Jesus is more satisfying than having a successful ministry. Being in a personal relationship with Jesus where you're experiencing the presence of Jesus, that is going to satisfy you far more than any miracle that Jesus has done within your ministry. There was hundreds of fish. You might think that that's like hundreds of people in your youth ministry. Peter, he sacrificed the miracle in a moment because he knew his priority was to be one-on-one with Jesus. So being in the presence of Jesus is ultimately more satisfying than anything Jesus can do for you. As you might be watching this as a youth leader, or maybe a young leader, or you might be a youth pastor. If you're in this stage of life, it's a stage of dreaming. It's amazing. You're dreaming like, actually, God, what are you going to do with me in my future? Make sure that those dreams are grounded in the presence of Jesus, that they've been born and come out of the presence of Jesus. So being with Jesus is ultimately more satisfying, more important than anything Jesus can do for you. We need to seek God's heart, not his hands. Leadership lesson number 2 is this. You can be successful without God. You heard me right. I know it sounds like a curveball, but you can be successful without God. You can gain a following without God. You can have influence without God. I know it sounds like a curveball, but the reality is you can be successful without God. But the thing is, the only thing you can do with God is the impossible. It's only with God that you can do the impossible. It's only with God that hearts begin to change. So you can be successful without God, but it's only with God that you can do the impossible. Hearts begin to change. And as the Bible says, you bear much fruit. In John 15, Jesus makes 2 outrageous promises to us. The first promise is this. He promises that when we remain in him, he will remain with us. That means when we abide in Jesus, he promises to never let us go. It's the first promise. The second promise he makes is that when we do remain in Jesus, when we abide in Jesus, we will bear much fruit. So it's only with Jesus that we can bear much fruit. You know, we live in a world and a generation that is just so hungry and desperate for success. We live in the Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos world where it's like solo. And you know, these people, they started from nothing and now they're multi-billionaires and they're some of the most powerful people on the planet. We live in a generation that is hungry for success. But success in the kingdom is not something to be chased. We shouldn't chase success in the kingdom. We should chase fruit. Because Paul says that churches, we will be known for our fruit. So anything that we do for God, whether it's our business or our ministry or our job, whatever it might be, we will be known by our fruit. Success in the kingdom is not chasing the best or being the biggest. It's chasing fruit. And that comes from being abiding and remaining with Jesus. Leadership lesson number 3 is this. It's okay to be an echo before you're a voice. You know, Chad Veach, a preacher, he says that research shows that it takes up to 6 years to find your own unique voice. And by voice here, we're talking about message, your own unique message. So if it takes 6 years to find that, then it's okay to take influence of the people who are around you and the voices that are around you who are further on in their leadership journey than you. Think about babies. Babies for years, they don't talk. They come out the womb and they're basically just potatoes. And then over time, they learn to crawl and then they walk. And then it's only after that amount of time that they begin to speak. And what they've been doing this whole time is they've been listening. They've been taking in the voices that are around them, the people who are clearly further on in life than them, and they've just been listening. And they've been developing a language. They've been developing their voice. And it's only over time that they then come out with their own unique voice. And it's the same in leadership. It's okay that if over time, especially as a young leader, to just be taking in the voices, getting as many voices around you as possible as you develop your own leadership language, as you develop your own unique message. That was my story. I took over from kind of a legend within the youth ministry world. And he was just a legend. And he was also a very gifted and talented speaker. And I'm sure for a long time, actually, I was just kind of mimicking what I'd seen. I was just really being an echo of the leader who was ahead of me. But it's only over time that I found my own unique voice. And I'm not just talking about like the way that your voice sounds. It's not about that. It's about your own unique message. This is something that God, He makes in you over time. He develops in you over time. So leaders, hear this. If you're a young leader, it's okay that you're figuring that out. It's okay to be an echo before you're a voice. Leadership lesson number 4 is this. Intention without action is just false hope. I'll say it again. Intention without action is just false hope. What does that mean? It means we can have the best intention in the world, but if we have no action to follow it up, then it's just false hope. Think about going to the gym. So many of us, we're like, and I've been there too, I'm going to get really fit. I'm going to run. I'm going to be a runner. Or I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to bulk up. That's our intention, but then we never actually get any motivation to even book with a gym. We never sign up to a gym. Our intention is to get fit, but we have no action, so actually it's not intention at all. It's just false hope. We might have the best intentions of I'm going to make the biggest business in the country. But actually the reality is I can't even wake up to my alarm on time and I just snooze it every day and I never actually wake up on time. We have the best intention, but we have no action. So it's just false hope. It's not intention at all. Intention without action is just false hope. There's a preacher called Rich Wilkerson who says, you don't rise to the level of your vision, you fall to the level of your systems. You don't rise to the level of your vision, you fall to the level of your systems. Your vision for your life might be that you want to see the whole of the UK saved. But, if that's your vision, but your system might be flawed if actually you don't have the motivation to even share the gospel with your closest non-Christian friends. So actually you're not rising to the level of your vision, you're falling to the level of your system, your process. So remember this, intention without action is just false hope. And then finally, leadership lesson number 5 is this: leading others starts with leading yourself. This point is your immediate next step off the back of this episode. When you close your computer or your iPad or whatever it is, this is exactly what I want to encourage you to do. Take an internal itinerary of how you are doing. How have you led yourself in this last kind of time? It's very easy to think that leadership is outward looking. It's not where it starts. Leadership starts by looking inward and leading yourself. This is how I think we do that. I think we are whole beings. Human beings, we're whole beings. We're not half beings, we're whole beings. Which means I think that our lives are made up of 3 different components. Those components are this: we are physical beings, we're spiritual beings, and we get those 2 really well done in the church. We're good physical and we're good spiritual beings, but actually we're also emotional beings. God has made us to be emotional beings. So they're the 3 components that you can check in yourself. How am I actually doing? Do a spiritual check on how you're doing. What does that kind of look like? A spiritual check kind of looks like, how are you doing with God? Do you feel excited about your devotion, or are you just kind of in like the rhythm of things and you're just kind of going from day to day with no real excitement, or maybe you've actually just completely given up on your devotion altogether and you don't feel that sense of connection to God right now? How is your spiritual life right now? A good check on that is John 15 that we said earlier. Do you feel like you're close and abiding with Christ? Do you feel like you are close to Christ? Are you living with Christ? That's a good spiritual health check. What about a physical health check? Well, a physical health check I think involves 3 different checks. How is your exercise? And I'm not talking about running marathons every week. I'm just talking about, like, are you walking daily at least? You're going for 1 run a week, it might look like, depending on what kind of fitness you are. It's just getting up and getting moving to release those exercise endorphins, so that it can give you that, excitement and motivation. Our physical directly impacts our spiritual and our emotional. So check your exercise, and I'm not talking about becoming crazy fit. I'm just talking about being. What am I talking about? I'm talking about getting off your bum at least once a week. How is your diet? Your diet, your food is your fuel. Are you eating well? You getting good fiber? Are you drinking well? This is just very simple stuff, but it's a good physical health check. And then finally, a good check is your sleep. Is your head just still seriously busy at midnight and you're not falling asleep? You've got to scroll for Instagram for an hour before you can even fall asleep. What is your sleep like? Do you feel like you can't disconnect from your phone? And what you might need to do instead is actually just turn off your phone at 8 o'clock if it takes you that long to fall asleep, and then you might fall asleep by 10 or 11. How is your sleep looking? Are you getting good sleep? So that's a good physical health check. And then finally, emotional health check. Like I said earlier, we are emotional beings. This is how God has created us to be. So it's important to ask yourself, how am I doing emotionally? How am I responding emotionally to the things that are going on in my life? Is there a relational problem at the moment? How do I feel about that? Do I feel anxious about that? Do I feel angry at this person? How are my relationships? In your emotional health check, it's important to check, how are my friends? Are me and my friends well? Are we in a good place? Are we in a bad place? How does that make me feel? Do I feel annoyed that we're in a bad place, or do I actually feel a bit relieved about it because we've got distance? It's important to check your emotional well-being to see how you are responding to the things that are coming at you in your life. So if you can check your spiritual being, your physical being, and your emotional being, then you as a leader, you're leading yourself. And leading people starts with leading yourself. Leadership is not first looking outward, it's looking inward and leading yourself. So there's 5 leadership lessons. I encourage you now, as you turn this off, Do an internal itinerary of those three beings that you are.